Hey FFR listeners, this is the producer Rob speaking. It's that time of year when everyone starts to think about the important things in life, like our taxes. Did you know that a donation to Feminist Frequency is actually tax deductible? If you have a few bucks a month to spare, head on over to patreon.com/femfreak, F-E-M-F-R-E-Q. Help us out, but also help yourself to all the great exclusive content that's available only to people who are signed up on our Patreon.
Same with Yentl.
Exactly. I mean, Barbra Streisand, Lady Macho, big time. In that she's militant at redecorating her home.
Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio presents Machos Fully Loaded. This is the podcast that asks you to be critical of the media you love, and this is the season where we're investigating masculinity in movies and TV. I'm Kat Spada.
And I am AC Lamberty. This week, ladies drink free. We're talking about gender transgression and the women in media who have taken on some very memorable, iconic macho action roles. Welcome to Lady Machos. And this is as good a time as any to say, strap in and strap on.
Oh, truly.
Muscles,
100% pure adrenaline.
weapons,
Your move, creep.
dominance,
Ain't gonna hurt.
machos.
The only place you're gonna go is the hospital.
I will be right back.
Okay, my first question for you is, what the fuck are you talking about? We have in our show notes, this is important for all of the listeners to know. I had just started free associating a list of like possible women actresses we could talk about in this episode. You know, your Brigitte Nielsen's, your Mila Jovovich's, your Gina Carano, LOL. And your comment stumped me. What does this mean? What do you mean, Isabelle Huppert, LMFAO?
Which one of these doesn't belong? Angela Bassett, Linda Hamilton, Zoe Saldana, Isabelle Huppert.
Was she just on your mind? As
I was preparing as I was preparing my kind of section notes and the person I was going to be talking about, who isn't like an action star per se, so I already misunderstood what we're doing today. But
who knows? Same.
That's okay. I was thinking of kind of actors in that same ilk that are like kind of just terrifying women actors. And,
okay.
Thought of Isabelle Huppert. I also thought of Cate Blanchett, who I definitely think is a lady macho, personally. Yeah. But she also has done kind of big superhero stuff too. So, I mean, there's that. But I don't know. Lydia Tarr is a macho to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that's like weird about this particular episode is I remember thinking, early on of Linda Hamilton, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, the James Cameron woman, which seems like an editorial. Like if a fashion magazine was like, this season, it's the James Cameron woman.
It's Cerulean. Is that the Devil Wears Prada? Whatever.
Yes. And don't worry,
something there.
The Devil Wears Prada will come up again later in this episode. But like... So this is my question, is like when we've talked about like male characters on like the fringes of like what machismo or hypermasculinity has been, I feel like there's this way in which like femininity is marginalized when men express it. Mm-hmm. But when women express masculinity, that's like not the same. It's just not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something to be revered or respected more, but then there's like that fine line of, if it's masculine in a way that is still, I don't know, like not underlying some kind of femininity, especially like physically presented, then it's dangerous or unlikable. And I mean, that's like a literal queer context, like if you think about like trans mass characters, or I think it just, I don't know, like Mrs. Trunchbull, for example, comes to mind. So there's a lot of kind of nuances of appearance there too, I think.
Very interesting with Mrs. Trunchbull. Did you see the new Matilda the musical with Emma Thompson?
I haven't. Was it Latasha Lynch or who played the new Trunchbull?
Lashana Lynch plays Miss Honey,
and
then Emma Thompson plays Miss Trunchbull.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. She's got like facial prosthetics going. She's definitely, I remember like when the first images were released, people were like, great, another fat suit role.
I was wondering if it was fat suit or if just like, I don't know, or if they decided to go full severe thin Miss Trunchbull, which could also be interesting. But
it's definitely in the fat suit like universe. But when I looked at it, I was like, oh, they're not. This is such a strange. Like I'm gonna talk a lot about like women's bodies.
Yeah.
Which, like, sorry,
same kind of.
It makes me feel weird, but in a way that like I don't when I talk about hunks. But anyway, there's. She's playing her as like this very athletic, like a track and field star, you know, so there's a lot of padding on her. But when I did watch the movie, I was like, oh, I don't see that they're dressing her to be like a fat woman. I see that they're dressing her to be a large person, but in a different context. That's something that when women have short hair or wear boots or pants or suits, if they're hot, then we love it.
Yes.
But like even like hot men can't wear like skirts and heels and be seen as like desirable in a heterosexual context.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting, like kind of to this point, when thinking about different lady machos or films or actresses that would fit into this category, it seemed like I was considering the outside lives of like celebrities themselves, like as they impacted the role more than I do with like typical male machos. I mean, like I think about superstars like our Patrick Swayze, like obviously I think about Patrick Swayze, but like in a role, I'm not thinking about like his outside life or appearance or whatever, because it's just kind of a given that he is a guy who's an incredible actor. He can like change himself to whatever the role demands. But with women action stars, there's so much discourse around like body type and like other projects that they've done and what their niche is and like them as a person, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it's like, I think that that's something that like kind of gets at the root. Like we're talking about what is masculinity or like what are we told to look for in it. But when we think about it with femininity, and this is Feminist Frequency Radio, like obviously Feminist Frequency has brought you tropes versus women in video games and like what kinds of expressions and archetypes we're used to seeing. But the way that like a woman's femininity is so tied, or like her ability to be sexualized is so tied to like whether or not she is a person, I think is also so stark in a lot of this. And like the fact that like if any of these women were not considered like conventionally attractive, they just wouldn't even be characters, you know, like they would just not even factor in to the mix.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up when I was like free associating about who we could talk about, like one of the first people that came to mind was Angela Bassett, because she is like, she's muscular and she has been in roles where she's played very like physically impressive women. I'll even say like playing Tina Turner, right, is like a physically impressive woman.
Yeah.
But there is like a whole added element when it comes to Black women and Black women's femininity, which I do think is so often like stripped of them, whether it's in fiction or in like real life. And so that's something like I'm not the person to like speak to that, but it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Did you ever see, like, I don't know, we talked a little bit about with mental health, like edgelord cinema, you know, like what do you think about like the dorm room poster concept of like some of these people? So like Sigourney Weaver in Alien, like how do you feel like these women or these characters like have factored into the pop culture context?
Yeah, I mean, my immediate I was thinking about this a little bit before we started recording too. Like, I feel like the action heroines of my age, like growing up, what I saw are this kind of weird contemporary, like macho woman who is just so serious, like so deeply serious to the point of like also desexualizing, and it's like the very utilitarian women, if that makes sense. Like compared to movies like I'll reference Romancing the Stone as kind of like an action, like Lost City-ish film. Like compared to films like that where the female lead or the woman macho has like some spunk and personality, you know what I mean? And I feel like that, I don't know, paired with like overt sexualizing of action heroines of days past is just so different from what I grew up with. And I like can't imagine Alicia Vikander's like Tomb Raider on a dorm room poster. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I think there was like a cardboard standee of Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider.
Oh yeah.
My dorm. Not like my room, but in my dorm.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the like what you brought up about like the character versus the actor and their real life is that obviously the queer coding of so many of these characters, and like your Lydia Tarr,
absolutely.
Kate Blanchett is like our number one lesbian actress who's not a lesbian, right?
Absolutely.
Like, second only to, I mean, Rachel Weisz is up there with the new Dead Ringers series, especially. But what's kind of different, with some exceptions, is that like I don't feel like any of these women could like really. Like, I don't think of any of them as being particularly like, oh, yeah, I think she could beat people up in fights. Which is such a strange thing. I don't know. Maybe that was extremely sexist of me, actually. Just, like, very misogynist. But, like, I want to take a moment to talk about, like, the secret James Cameron woman, Zoe Saldana. Like, she's this, like, person who's in major franchises, often hidden by makeup. And, like, I think of her as such a slight physical person. Again, so much talking about women's bodies right now. But she's playing, like, tough characters.
Yeah. Again, someone who's very utilitarian. Like, she's so serious in all these Marvel films, which, like, obviously that's the character. But it's interesting that that's the direction kind of women's action stars have gone in.
Yeah. Right, like who's not right? So Brie Larson, she's like spunky, like you said, you know, on top of all of this. Well, I have some two kind of strange examples. AC and I realized after we had kind of prepped this episode that like we don't have like strong emotional responses to a lot of these characters. They may be ones like, I do love Mad Max Fury Road, or like there's, you know, plenty of, I like Katie Sackhoff on Battlestar Galactica. You know, like these are characters I do enjoy, I really like, but they haven't necessarily elicited the same kind of like hero worship as maybe some of the others that we've talked about, which that is again part of this season's psychological mining of my own self that I need to do.
I think for me though, like quick little addition to that, and maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but like I found that in most of the examples of Lady Machos that I watched or have seen before and didn't have a huge emotional reaction to, like you were saying, it's almost always just because like the writing, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's not a nuanced, a nuanced filmmaking choice of like in any like to make it authentic about women, like whatever.
Excellent point.
Yeah, I usually like a lot of these performances, but sometimes I'm just like, this just is badly written, you know?
Badly written. These are all kind of like directors that have either like just fetishized this kind of woman or they've thrown her in for fun. Or like, you know, oh yeah, we're going to do this with a woman and that's what's interesting. Not like, let's find what's interesting about the character.
Right.
Which I think is like, this is maybe one because you and I both are a little conflicted about the topic this week, that like maybe listeners can let us know who they have seen as like exceptions to this rule. And I think there's probably a lot of characters that like we've forgotten about or overlooked, but I think that like I'm coming back to the part where a lot of these women are just like traditionally beautiful. And that's something that I almost felt like, again, it's like, this is like some internalized misogyny, but where I was like, boring, you know, like, which is so silly because like like I was looking at some action movies in particular, and there's plenty of dramas that have cast beautiful actresses that I've been like, wow, what a performance, what a role. But when I'm talking about like these kind of action heroes, it's like, yeah, duh, they're going to put Ronda Rousey into the Fast and the Furious franchise. Like, she pretty.
She's family as well.
She's family. She's thick. thick through the skull,
Period.
thick through the thighs. That's all you need. But like, you know, you talked about Miss Trunchbull. Like, there's something like that does kind of strain credulity a little bit more about like Angelina Jolie, Uma Thurman as like action heroes instead of like Olympic powerlifters, track and field stars. When you see gymnasts, even like a gymnast and a powerlifter have like the two opposite body types, but they're both extremely strong, powerful physiques, and that's not who we see in these movies.
Yeah, it's like a certain, I don't know, and it does make me think about like the more masculine makeup of the body, you know what I mean, and how that manifests in cis women. I mean, I'm speaking as a trans person I don't know if I've disclosed, but like, you know, it's something I think about a lot is how my body has changed with the introduction of different hormones. And it's interesting that like there's a line where it's like you get pushed too far into masculine appearance and then it's like comedy, essentially. Like that's how I feel about the Trunchbull of it all. Which makes it, you know, extremely difficult to like introduce that kind of character as something other than a punchline most of the time. Right. Yeah.
And they're just unsexed, to borrow a line from Lady Macbeth, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you have lost like what makes you feminine, like if you've lost the femininity, you can have the femininity with some masculinity, you can have some androgyny, but if you've lost the feminine, then it's like, it's either humor or it's like frightening. Like it's a villainy that we don't want to face, I guess. So I also wanted to like note, like, especially for my segment, I'm talking about like a traditional description of physical strength that's portrayed in these characters. Like these are not the movies where you see someone who is like extremely strong of will or extremely like, you know, these, I actually like do need to read a dissertation about the movie. What was it called? Skyscraper with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Skyscraper.
That movie came and went. It's like literally he has to fight his way up and then down a skyscraper.
I love a high concept.
Yeah, his character's an amputee and has a prosthetic leg.
Okay.
And there's like, because it's The Rock, he's using his disability in a way where it's like, oh, I need to reach that like thing because I'm like trying to jump. I'm going to like take my leg off and use it to like reach
as a
the
grappling
thing.
Hook, sure.
Totally. In a way like that, I just feel like we're talking about these physical specimens in a way that's not representative of the real world and of the population. So
for sure,
consider that like a very milquetoast disclaimer, because as I said, like I'm being very, I'm digging into aesthetics here a lot. So I'm going to talk about Michelle Yeoh and Emily Blunt, two women who I would definitely consider like they're very slight, slender women, but they've been in these muscular roles. Michelle Yeoh, of course, is known for her work in action cinema, and Emily Blunt is not, but she has a couple of like macho career highlights. And that's
I think of
very
her as a
interesting
macho
to me.
for sure. I think, her popular ones are big actiony.
And it's
stuff.
like, it's fascinating to me that she can do both. That well, not that she can do both, that she's like allowed to do both.
Yeah, that she has continued to work in multiple. I mean, she was in like a big Disney film too recently. I mean, well, she is the remade Mary Poppins too.
Yeah.
Funny.
And it's like, you know, because they're so beautiful and they've been in these like roles where they're fighting, you wouldn't typecast them as like heavies or like toughs, you know?
Yeah.
I do think with Michelle Yeoh, like in the roles where she's like more in her middle-aged roles, like she's very emotionally tough. Like she is playing maybe the type of character like you are digging into today.
Yeah.
Of strong, severe women.
Yes.
Which like that's just the sliding scale. Once you like aren't the most like gentle, fuckable girl on the planet.
Yeah. Oh my god, ageism is totally a part of the Lady Macho convo too, as like we'll come up with the person I'm talking about. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like who knows when we're gonna have a chance to talk like more in depth about Tom Cruise, especially, you know, after last week's Patreon. But like I'm dying to have the conversation about Tom Cruise's ability to age or not. and like age and de-age and then age again, like him removing all his fillers and stuff for Top Gun Maverick and the awards push and everything, and like looking slightly older but better, and like people are like, he's aging naturally now, like, and then being able to control that conversation as a cis guy is crazy. Do you think that was Lady Gaga's commentary of taking all her makeup off to do a Joe Calderone special on the Oscars?
Oh my god, no, she actually advised him on removing those fillers. It's like, I have a great guy.
So let's start with Michelle Yeoh. I finally watched Yes, Madam. I don't know how to pronounce it. Yes, comma, Madam, exclamation mark.
I think that's a great line reading.
Thank you. This is her first starring role. It is a 1985 Hong Kong action flick from Corey Yuen. I finally watched it because Criterion Channel has a new-ish collection called Michelle Yeoh Kicks Ass.
Love that.
I mean, how are you, like, we talked to this about war movies a little bit, like not totally your steez, but what about like a martial arts movie? How do those...
So deeply unfamiliar. I'm not even sure I've seen like a specifically like martial arts movie. I don't even know if I've seen one at all.
Very excited to send some recommendations your way, and for listeners to send them to me, because
absolutely, this
is one of those places where it's like Hong Kong, Thailand, Indonesia. Like there are completely robust cinemas that are churning these movies out, and I used to do martial arts in my 20s.
Oh, nice.
Completely inspired by the movie Ong Bak, which is a Thai action movie.
That is amazing.
Yes. Starring Tony Jaa. This is a digression from the Lady Machos, but like,
that makes this movie, you a Lady Macho.
Once upon a time. Today I'm like happily crocheting in my armchair. But
love that.
Muay Thai is so cinematic. It's such a cool sport because I'm like so embarrassed to talk about this. It's an 8-point form of combat. So like fists, elbows, knees, feet. And there's also like clinch wrestling, and it's very at the time when I was training, like I was maybe 115 pounds, you know, like I was a very small person, and I felt like it was a type of martial art that you could still dominate somebody quite a bit larger than yourself.
Yeah.
And like literally I went to a fair and I saw a place that offered Muay Thai lessons, and I started demonstrating on my friend based on watching the movie Ong Bak too many times.
Oh my God.
And they came up to me and they were like, yeah, you don't actually know how to do this, but you definitely want to learn. And
oh my God, you were scouted. That's huge. That's incredible. You're gonna have to teach me.
These are stories of my youth that you know, one day they'll make up a life. I don't know what to tell you.
I love it.
So anyway, here's the thing about martial arts cinema. a lot of times these movies are not good. They are in service of incredible stunt work and choreography.
Right.
And that is completely okay by me. I, of course, will watch a blood sport or, of course, like I just said, Ong Bak. There are so many good ones that are just like, even some of the stuff that's in like Old Boy, where there are movies that are serving that level of incredible fight scenes. They just don't have the writing and the performances that you're getting in the rest of the movie like you are with Ong Bak. So, Yes, Madam is a perfect example of like a movie that's not particularly good, but it has some of the best action scenes you'll ever see.
Nice.
So Michelle Yeoh plays Senior Inspector Ng, who's a Hong Kong cop, and she pairs up with Cynthia Rothrock. And we're going to definitely post some links to videos in the show notes because Cynthia Rothrock is like a hidden gem if you're not a martial arts movie fan. She plays Senior Inspector Morris, who's in town from Scotland Yard. It's so great. I think I brought this up with RRR.
Yeah.
I love when a non-Western, like cinema or movie or TV show, is extremely casual with how it like blends together Westerners.
Yeah.
Because that's what Western cinema does to everyone else.
100%. Yeah.
Like Cynthia Rothrock is like an American. She's like dubbed speaking like it's so weird. It doesn't like really work. Also the fact that like they kind of think she's Scottish because she's from Scotland Yard, even though that's in London. And I'm like, perfect. It doesn't, who cares?
Yes.
Who cares? And so like, yeah, there's a plot. It's very MacGuffin. There's a microfilm that has been accidentally stolen by 3 brothers who are pickpockets. And
antics ensue.
All the antics. But like, in a way, again, where it's like one of these pickpockets lives in an apartment that's got all these shelves and walls that move, and they use it for fights in a way that is so impressive.
Cool.
But what is really kind of the point of watching this movie is like to see these like 2 women paired up fighting, whether they're like interrogating somebody and it's just like, oh, I'm going to beat up this one guy, or if it's like the last huge action set piece where they're fighting dozens of men. And the first time you see Cynthia Rothrock, she's wearing a sensible skirt suit. But the skirt has like a slit all the way up to her hip because she's doing these like insane high kicks and scorpion kicks. And it's like, whoever in costuming was like, well, she's a lady. Yeah. So she should wear a skirt. But she's going to be doing an insane amount of like martial arts. So this isn't going to work.
Wow.
I looked this movie up on tvtropes.org, which included the following tropes for this one: action girl, all periods are PMS, boyish short hair, and would hit a girl.
These are like all upcoming episodes for us.
Yeah, would hit a girl actually is a really good episode.
Oh my God.
It's like, God.
That could be something. Okay, anyway.
It could be something. And so like, this is one of those, like what's so interesting about this is thinking about it in the scope of Michelle Yeoh's career. So here I am like, yeah, I'm looking at this movie because it is a very fun action movie. You see women who are strong, but also like Michelle Yeoh's character is like the bad cop. Like she will kind of do anything to like get information out of a suspect. And Cynthia Rothrock is like, hey, like beating him up isn't going to do the job. And then like 5 guys show up and she beats them up. Like, you know.
Love that. Principled. Also, like, this movie is not particularly interested in these women characters, even though they are the central characters of the movie. There's so much more development with these, like, random pickpockets who have found themselves in the storyline. That's interesting. I don't know. Part of me is like, wow, it's a little bit subversive to, like, treat women like true machos in that way, where it's like there's so little character development. But then in examples, like contemporary examples I watched, I found it annoying. Like, like actively frustrating. But I feel like for a movie from like 1985, I would probably like it.
You would. I think you would enjoy this movie. Like it's very fun to watch. And then whenever there is like a moment that could be done well, it's done just kind of crummily in a way that's like, you know, like at one point, there's a lot of like boob jokes.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, it's 1985. Every movie was like legally obligated to have 12 boob jokes. But
you would be fined by the WGA if you didn't.
Yeah. So, you know, the dialogue in this movie includes somebody saying to Michelle Yeoh, "All women are bitches," and her response, "So you are a son of a bitch?" And it's like, oh shit,
go off,
got him. You know, but
she literally, I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah,
this dude.
Yeah.
Go on.
So I just kind of wanted to use it as like an example of what's so interesting about Michelle Yeoh, and we're talking about her a couple weeks after she has won the Oscar for
started her reign as Best Actress.
Yeah, and like this is someone who, what I think is really interesting is about her early career. She was Miss World Malaysia, and then this is her first starring role after doing some commercials and stuff. And I don't know whose decision it was that she was going to do her own fight scenes. It seems very possible that she was offered stunt doubles and instead decided, no, I can just train in the gym for 8 hours a day and I can do this myself. And that set a trajectory. Now she's like on, you know, decades later, she's playing both a sort of bedraggled mom and an action star in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And in that movie, you get to see all these different versions of herself, of this character of Evelyn. And one of them is Michelle Yeoh, right? Like one of them is the movie star who I think it's kind of made clear in the movie that like that version of herself doesn't have any children. Where our primary Evelyn and many other Evelyns in the movie are a mother to Joy, which is like the central kind of conflict of this movie. And that is true of Michelle Yeoh as well. She does not have any children. And she's said that her inability to have children was the reason for the end of her first marriage.
Wow. That
I'm very intrigued by, again, in the context of like when a woman becomes quote unquote unsexed.
Yeah.
The fact that like she married this very wealthy man when she was younger, she quit acting. And then when they got divorced, she became an actor again. And all of that was before Crouching Tiger. That was before Super Cop. That was before Tomorrow Never Dies. Like,
wow.
So without that kind of like, I think very simple, like woman's conflict of like, I was a wife, so I didn't want to work, but then I couldn't be a mom, so I was no longer a wife. So I decided to go be the world's biggest female action star.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
There's just something really enthralling about that.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So also, like, one thing I was thinking about in, like, focusing so much on bodies, which we do a lot with male characters because we're talking about, when we talk about athletes and soldiers and men, sex workers, like, whose body is their transactional value. This is, like, she could get away. She could have gotten away with, like, continuing to be in, like, kind of bad action movies forever and being a really good action star. Because a lot of times she was in movies where she didn't even speak the language.
Yeah.
And was just learning lines phonetically. But because she's talented, you know, we got to see her do more. And ultimately, like, we only got to see her do more like because the winds of change decided to blow in a certain kind of way,
Right.
with industry decisions. So, yeah, I definitely recommend Yes, Madam for anyone who likes a fun 80s movie, like a fun 80s action movie. But I definitely this is one of those where I was like, am I talking about Inspector Ng? Am I talking about Michelle Yeoh?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Totally.
And then how about, we're going to talk Emily Blunt now just for a few minutes, much
Love
less riveting of a career, but a curious
to me,
one.
again, yeah, a macho in my first and foremost in my mind, like an action star.
Like, that is what is so, I mean, Michelle Yeoh also just like a beautiful, a flawless face, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Emily Blunt has played the young Queen Victoria, you know, and she's been in like your little talk movies, and she's been in The Devil Wears Prada.
Right.
Like, how is it that you can think of her as a macho and not, you'd never think of like Anne Hathaway or Zooey Deschanel that way?
Yeah.
Even
That's interesting. Even like Emily Blunt's, like her in The Devil Wears Prada, I am like, oh, that's just like a character role she took. It's just like, I don't know. That doesn't, yeah, it's interesting that her impact on me is so action thriller oriented. I don't know why.
This is absolutely deranged, but like, I truly think it might be because of her cleft chin.
Wow. Could be.
Like,
Could be.
I think that gives a strength to her face.
Yeah.
That, like, this is somebody I was thinking of in this episode, which is Jennifer Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer Lawrence plays Mystique. She got a whole generation of girls to learn archery.
Yeah.
She plays a really tough character in Winter's Bone.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think of her as like a macho.
Yeah, me neither.
She is like round and soft in a way that I don't think of Emily
Girlish,
Blunt.
almost.
Yeah, and like I'm literally thinking about musculoskeletal face shapes in this, and that's where it's like, that's where it gets into like just the really fucked up territory of like, how symmetrical are you? It's going to like say what kind of characters you can play.
Absolutely.
But Edge of Tomorrow is this movie from 2014. Have you seen it?
I haven't. I knew that Tom Cruise is in it, and listen, I've seen a lot of Tom Cruise movies this year already.
Yeah.
And I am not, this one has always been like, should we watch it? I don't know. So I'm excited to hear if it's a wreck for you or not.
It's such an interesting movie because I remember really liking the screenplay. I think it's based on a comic. And the best part about it is Tom Cruise, and the worst part about it is Tom Cruise, which is true of literally every Tom Cruise
True
movie.
of my life.
Yeah. It starts so strong. This movie starts so strong and ends so weak. So that's like why I would definitely recommend it. It's a Groundhog Day movie.
Okay, sure.
That's the concept, the same day over and over again. Except in an intergalactic battle against alien invasion.
Tight.
Yeah.
Just my thing.
The best part, introduction to Tom Cruise's character is that he is a coward and a shitheel.
Hey, art imitates, as they say.
He's so good at playing assholes.
Yes, he is one of our best in that regard.
He's so good at it. And there's like times where I'm like, I want to know everything about Tom Cruise's inner monologue, because does he take this role and think like, what a stretch for me? You know, like, to play a coward.
This isn't like me at all.
No, I would do my own stunts. This character doesn't want to fight. I could never.
Going method as a kind person.
He's introduced as like sort of this foil to Emily Blunt, who is a like all-time hero. So she has been established as like having unmatched skill in battle. Her image is used for recruitment posters. A major battle against the aliens was only won because of her.
Wow.
And that's just kind of set up in like an opening montage. It's very Starship Troopers in that way, where it's just like some newsreel footage of what's been going on.
Yeah, love that.
But like the movie's not about her. So again, like this is a bummer because she is, when you watch this and you see her like physically in this movie, she's very impressive to look at. Mm-hmm. She's, you know, live like a yoga expert or something, but she is strong. She's balanced. Every time you, when Tom Cruise is reliving the same day over and over, when he sees Emily Blunt for the first time, she's like perfectly balanced on her hands while she like does some meditative exercise.
Wow.
There's like whirring alien simulation happening around her, and she's just like completely centered and like glistening with sweat.
I like need to see this just to understand the circumstances that like lead to, that's incredible. Yeah.
And so it's like basically, you know, I'm like spoiler alert, but like it doesn't really matter. He goes into battle and every day he dies and it resets the clock. And then he gets the opportunity to learn. So, okay, yesterday he saw somebody get killed. The next day he can like push them out of the way. And over and over and over again until he goes from being like a coward to being like a very expert battle warrior, which is, we learn pretty quickly what had happened to Emily Blunt. That's why she was able to win the battle previously, is that she had been in a time loop as well. And like where it kind of falls apart is like, again, that they don't really give her enough. And the whole movie suffers because of it.
She is just a deeply serious woman who is a battle commander. Like it really is whatever quote it is, it from like The Second Sex or something, like about like woman first, and then everything else is like, oh well, you're also this and a woman, you know?
Right. And it's kind of the 51st Dates setup of the fact that like every day is Tom Cruise's day like 400, but is Emily Blunt's day 1.
Yeah.
So she cannot develop as a character enough.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of stuff where it's like, oh yeah, if you knew someone, you got to know them every day for, it's unclear how long this could last. This could have gone on for months or years even. Of course, like he's falling for her. But she's like, okay, I just met you today and you're telling me this and I believe it because it happened to me. So how are we going to beat the aliens?
Yeah.
And like, again, it's like, oh, that's almost subversive in a way that I want to like.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's so close, but then given all the actual socio-political context we're in, it just doesn't work to have a woman action hero who's so vastly underwritten.
Well, and you're going to have to do a lot more legwork for me to be like, I'm so glad that I got all this Tom Cruise character development and like none from Emily Blunt. And then, like she kisses him and it's like, it's kind of like mercifully underwritten that there's any kind of romantic tension between them because it's not that it's like unbelievable, but it's just completely unnecessary to the story and tale as old as time. So it's just like, she's another one where I'm like, how is it that like, I don't know if she just has a great agent or if it's like the blue statification of John Krasinski. Really? I mean, that she's like beloved by a lot of different quadrants of the
it's true,
industry. I remember how shocked people were that she won the SAG award for A Quiet Place. And I can't remember who she was up against, but like she was not an Oscar contender. That wasn't like a role people were really paying attention to. But other actors voted for her because she was in a role where she was playing a pregnant woman who gives birth, you know, like a new mother to a newborn, a mother to a child with a disability who's like using sign language to communicate with a deaf child, and she's fighting aliens.
Yeah.
And I felt like, her cohort, her like colleagues in acting were like, yeah, she can do it all.
Wow, that is so interesting. I did not know she won the SAG. That's like fascinating.
Yeah, because it's not like, it's kind of a I mean, it's the hero role of the movie, like really. But yeah, I'm just very curious to see like, and I would love to find out if like the reason she hasn't done more action roles is she's like, it's a pain in the ass to train for those. Like, I don't have to train like that, you know, to be in the Jungle Book.
Jungle Cruise.
Jungle Cruise. To play Baloo in the Jungle Book,
exactly.
like voiceover or whatever. You know, that's great. I love that. If she's just like, yeah, you know, those took a toll, and I was tired of like spraining my ankle for this work. You know, good for you. But yeah, just a couple of examples.
Confusing, enduring action legacy of Emily Blunt.
Like one day there might be a Criterion Channel collection. Emily Blunt kicks ass, and it's
Do
like
we consider
Sicario 8.
Girl on the Train? Is that Woman on the Train? Sorry.
No.
That feels like, I don't know. I was kind of considering thrillers in my analysis today as a macho thing.
I mean, wow, you just opened up a portal into like Jodie Foster conversation that I'm bummed we're not really getting into. But yeah.
Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one.
An icon of the genre.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Damn. So like, I don't know, in conclusion, good for you for being like genetically so beautiful and also athletic and good actors. Both of you. Congrats.
They're definitely listening. I feel like my take on Lady Machos is quite different. Had to go a little cinephile with it, because of course
that's what you're here for.
It's literally what I'm here for. Initially I was kind of thinking of doing some kind of like femme fatale commentary, what history, like whatever. And so in preparation for that, I was like, you know what? I've never seen Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I have friends who love that movie. I watched that, and then I kind of revisited Atomic Blonde. And I found both of them, like, as we've discussed, like a little boring. And I really don't think it's because it's about women or like the performances are bad or whatever. But with all of these movies, I was just like, it's so, I don't know, the filmmaking or storytelling about women specifically is so boring. Just so one note, so action for action's sake. And just like ultimately felt kind of disappointing. You know what I mean? So like all, like, I think as we've discussed, a lot of the similarities here are like the action scenes and the choreo and everything are incredible. And I love these performances and I think they're fun, which is great. But in terms of storytelling and like a depth, there's just a depth missing for me.
Right. They'll have a great scene and then it'll cut to James McAvoy and he's like, oh, damn. Like
Exactly. Or with Atomic Blonde, for example, like there's that incredible stairwell fight scene that's just this one take in it. I remember people freaking out about it when the movie came out. And then the plot itself is kind of incomprehensible and it's supposed to be like kind of a hot bisexual action film and it just disappoints on that level as well.
Right. Same with Yentl.
Exactly. I mean, Barbara Streisand, Lady Macho, big time. In that she's militant at redecorating her home.
Atomic Blonde, I remember, like, I've seen both of those movies, but, like, I almost feel like the big deal of that one was, like, wow, she actually has bruises.
Yeah. Like, she looks kind of haggard or something.
Right, because she just had a crazy fight, like a Born Identity or whatever level fight with all these assailants, and then she's in pain because she's a human, and it was like, that's kind of the main thing I remember about like discourse from that movie.
Yeah. That's interesting because I also recently saw the newest John Wick, like Chapter 4, which, I mean, obviously led by man Keanu Bay. but I was interested.
Like, invited to the Lady Macho party.
He yes, absolutely, 100%. But Rina Sawayama is in it as like I don't know, one of the killers he meets along the way. Spoiler: this movie was not for me. Like, it's just not for me. I know myself; it was not my thing. But in Atomic Blonde and in John Wick Chapter 4, like the violence there is so it's bloody. Like it's not a bloodless Marvel kind of action film. And seeing women in that is cool, but again, once that eclipsed, I was kind of like, okay, like I don't know, I wanted more. So then I started thinking about kind of earlier discussion we had about macho, like Lady Machos as characters versus their public personas.
Yeah.
And thinking about like actors I think about who are kind of, embody machismo or masculinity in their actual day-to-day lives. Like Cate Blanchett, again, was kind of one of the initial people that came to me. I think Jodie Foster's a great example. And to me, they are like actresses who can embody different kinds of masculinity. Like every episode we have is a different trope or whatever. And I think like Lydia Tarr is macho on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Like I think that like that's still a macho role, and she plays those different macho roles, but in more nuanced ways. But anyway, the person I came to the conclusion on was talking about today was Kathleen Turner.
Interesting.
Who is so interesting to me in a few of my favorite movies. Notably John Waters' Serial Mom and Ken Russell's Crimes of Passion.
See, my favorite character of hers is playing Chandler's dad on Friends. Just kidding.
That's trans mask representation.
I mean, that was a joke, listeners, because it was pretty gross. I'm interested to hear about this because, like, I know of her more as an archetype of like the sexual type of character that she plays, and yet she has always had like that husky voice and
exactly
and like a
there
powerful
is such a
physical
physicality
presence.
Totally. Which is why I totally agree with you in that it's like, wow, we're talking a lot about people's bodies today, but like that's part of it for sure for her. Like I think there is a certain physicality about her and her voice that makes her deviant from like traditional femininity.
Yeah.
And especially women in genre films, like especially like your Brian De Palma kind of like sex thriller horror that like Crimes of Passion is similar to, I would say tonally. Like, and in films like in Body Heat, which like her first, feature breakout from 1981, like the classic erotic thriller, even as a sex symbol, she's still really domineering and like broad and very powerful, which feels so different from contemporary kind of action stars or like genre, like women leading actresses. Also her voice. I mean, every single article I read about her has some kind of intro that's like, her voice, like whatever. This Vogue article started with Kathleen Turner's voice has always commanded attention. Pick any random review of Body Heat or Romancing the Stone and you'll see it likely see it described as smoky, sexy, sensuous, tobacco cured, or scotch laden. Like, okay, chill.
But this is part of the conversation we had with Machos Who Fuck. This has come up in previous seasons of Feminist Frequency, which is the trend towards sexlessness in cinema. Yeah. These are all movies from like the era of the erotic 80s that You Must Remember This podcast has been doing a series on, like how they could have movies that weren't just movies about sex. They were movies with stories about characters, and they had sex. Right.
Totally. And it's interesting thinking about her, like a macho who's also a sex symbol, who's also a woman, because I mean, it's very similar to Machos Who Fuck. Like she's using her body in a really athletic, powerful way in a lot of these movies. Like the physicality stuff in Crimes of Passion is crazy. Like there's a lot of work that goes into that. And so she is like strong and like powerful in this kind of macho way, even though she's, I think, first considered a sex symbol in those first two films, at least. But I also, thinking of her outside of acting, like as a person, as a celebrity, she has been accused of being very difficult to work with a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And stopped working kind of by the mid 90s, at least as frequently as she used to. And that just makes me think as well about like male machos and who they are outside of, off screen, being maybe difficult to work with, but still being like iconic action stars and continuing work.
Yeah.
And a big thing with Kathleen Turner's career is that she took a lot of kind of genre-y roles, be they like kind of action adventure with Romancing the Stone, or, you know, erotic thriller with Body Heat, or, you know, kind of straight comedy with Serial Mom from, I think, 1995. Her taking genre roles as kind of a like Lady Macho,
Yeah.
historically never worked, like furthered her career per se, at least in her account.
Yeah.
She said there was a Vulture interview where they asked her, like, there really isn't an identifiable Kathleen Turner type character. And she says, yeah, people kept recognizing me from a movie, and then they'd, you know, associate it with another and be like, oh my God, you're in all these different films. Like, that's crazy. And she says, they never put my work together because I wasn't doing the same thing over and over, which, by the way, wasn't good for me financially. So it's interesting thinking of her as like a Lady Macho, who I am like akin to like an actor like Tom Cruise or Patrick Swayze, who have so much versatile work, but are still like undeniably and like reliably referred to as kind of iconic machos.
And whenever there is like a woman who is a sex symbol, who is quote unquote hard to work with, like those careers get squashed.
Totally.
I mean, like Sharon Stone is a really interesting character to talk about in this context. I have heard I've heard what Kathleen Turner said about working with Nick Cage on Peggy Sue Got Married, and that like his career is fine. Everyone knows he's a weirdo. Yeah.
And in one of the interviews, she talks about working with Anthony Perkins on Crimes of Passion, who would like do poppers before every take to get in the headspace of this, you know, drugged out like street preacher he was playing. And then it was just hell to be around him on set because he was constantly doing poppers. Like, I don't know, you know, toxic set behavior for sure. And she is the one whose career suffered because she's kind of a hard ass, you know?
Yeah. And how that can be transgressive in a character, but it's not tolerable from an actress.
Exactly. And I think there's like that line of masculinity where it's like once you go over, it's like either not tolerable or scary, like you said, or like funny, depending on the context.
Well, and like, obviously there's big differences between like the Hong Kong cinema business and Hollywood, but like, I'm curious, even just thinking about your Tom Cruise being like, I'm going to do all these stunts, and like Michelle Yeoh being like, I'm going to do it all myself. And like, at what point is somebody being like, do I have to get this movie fucking insured because this actor is determined to do everything themselves? Like, how does that go from being like something we lionize to something that is like,
it's like, oh, that's so cool to,
When it's like, well, it's a workplace. So what are we asking people to do in their workplace?
Totally. Yeah. So I am very interested in like what accounts of the, I didn't read a ton of like allegations besides she was just like kind of rude, but she in 2018 kind of famously went on the record and was like, a lot of sexism. I've experienced a lot of sexism in this business. And I am obviously inclined to believe her. But anyway, so Kathleen Turner as a macho figure just made me think a lot about, like, in comparison to, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Angelina Jolie, or Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde. Like, where is my trepidation with them in action roles versus how I feel about Kathleen Turner and her kind of genre, like, badass roles? And I think this is, like, a crazy kind of theory, but it feels like in a movie like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Angelina Jolie is obviously competent at her job and is good at being an assassin, or, you know, she's able to like be threatening to villains, but to the actual men in her life, we know that she's not a threat because she's a beautiful woman, and like she's a beautiful woman first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they can ultimately be brought to heel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Whereas with Kathleen Turner, there's just something about her where I'm like, oh, she is actually a threat to the men that she's working with. Like the Johns in Crimes of Passion, literally her victims in Serial Mom, which is like my favorite role of hers, I think, murdering her neighbors. The same with Body Heat, where she's like, you know, engaged in this kind of twisted, erotic murder web. Like there's kind of a real threatening aura to her that I am obsessed with, and I think is so Macho.
This is really great. I'm so glad that you had like a different read on what a Lady Macho could be, because like it's not easy to try to apply like the rules of your Sylvester Stallone Macho to women who've like had any kind of impact in Hollywood, right? And to think about the things that make women powerful in storytelling, and like that just turn all those up to 11. And it seems like that's what she's doing in all of these movies, even if she's not like,
oh, for sure,
doing parkour or whatever.
For sure. And at the same time, it's like she has this kind of underlying macho, like simmering quality, but I also feel like her roles are always different. She's not playing the same kind of Bruce Willis vibes, like is essentially the same action hero in every single thing. She really is varied with her roles, which is why I think of like Tom Cruise and how the breadth of stuff that he's taken, or at least did in earlier parts of his career. And it's also why I think I thought of Isabelle Huppert, like for real, or Jodie Foster, or Cate Blanchett, or any number of kind of prestige actresses, because there's like a scariness to them.
Yeah.
That I find incredibly macho and like intense and masculine, in the vein of a lot of my favorite performances from men,
Yeah. I love this.
Yeah.
I have not seen Body Heat, Crimes of Passion, or Serial Mom.
Oh my gosh.
Where do I start? Or Romancing the Stone.
Start with Serial Mom, I say.
Okay.
I don't know. That was my first movie I ever saw her in, and I was just like, Kathleen Turner's the most like handsome woman I've ever seen. Like, like positive. She's just so like, she's so good in it. So, I don't know. So funny. So highly recommend her in that. And then I went back and watched Body Heat and Crimes of Passion, which are from 10 years prior to Serial Mom, if not more. And she's just still has the same kind of insane self-assuredness and like that kind of threatening vibe, but you get to see her be like kind of sinister in a sexy, cool way, which is fun.
I love it. Well,
big fan.
I think this is powerful stuff. Personally, I feel like I can tap into a strength and a machismo having this conversation that I wasn't sure about before. But we'll be right back to share this season's version of the Freak Out Macho of the Week.
Hey FFR listeners, are you signed up to our Patreon yet? If you're not, you're missing out on special content made exclusively for our patrons. And if you're not a patron, that means that you're not helping me get paid. And if you're not helping me get paid, that means my good little dog Griffin isn't getting the good treats. Head on over to patreon.com/femfreak. That's FEMFREQ. Become a patron to get great content and also to make sure my dog Griffin gets the good treats. Oh, and you get the good treats as well, which in your case would be quality discussions about media.
What's your freak out?
Okay, now it is time to talk about the macho that's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. Kat, tell us all about it.
Look, as we've both expressed, this segment is about talking about who turns us on, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In so many words.
Yeah. So I was very pleased to see on my Instagram feed a post from somebody who has the best Instagram handle around at genderless_gap_ad. And this week I'm freaking out about non-binary hunk ER Fightmaster.
Welcome to the hall.
Who has a surname like that? Like,
it's great.
It's
amazing.
I feel like this, this was an opportunity, of course, to like take a look at a macho, a hunk, a macho of the week who is not totally mask presenting, like somebody who's non-binary and who expresses different elements of gender.
For sure.
They are a Cincinnati native, and they came across my Instagram feed this week because the Human Rights Campaign of Greater Cincinnati honored them with the 2023 Visibility Award.
Nice.
So I watched their lovely speech, which they said gender is not about an arbitrary set of rules. Gender is the energy with which we express our joyful understanding of self. And receiving hatred with grace is a constant practice. This was really interesting to me because I am a cis woman. I go around the world not receiving hatred in the way that they do, or that a lot of people who are trans or of different gender identities do. But I really appreciate that. I think gender being the energy with which we express our joyful understanding of self is something that all people should be able to experience.
Yeah, that really resonates with me.
Yeah.
Lately. Yeah.
And like the gender binary, just like the patriarchy, like it harms everyone. So, you know, the gender binary is bad for all people. Like the patriarchy is bad for men. You know, like I think there are a lot of ways in which like trans people are going to save us all. Like, sorry about it. Like, I hope you're ready for that, for that fucking horrible amount of responsibility. But like, to go up there and say these things and hopefully be heard by people who need to hear them, I think was really, really wonderful.
I love that.
Then at the end of their speech, they reached deep into my Bridget Jones's Diary loving heart and said, I love you just the way you are. And it gave me a shiver. I mean, I've had a crush on ER for several years. I first saw them on the A.D. Bryant series Shrill on Hulu. And because I'm deeply troubled, I still watch Grey's Anatomy.
Wow.
It's like a very...
You sure you want to keep that in?
You know, look, I am a millennial, and that show came on when I was in college. And it's still on. And I'm
security blanket.
I'm still watching. And every time they pop up as Dr. Kai Bartley, who's Amelia Shepard's love interest, I'm like, great. Thank goodness for you.
Oh my God. Kai is literally like the John of non-binary names. It's so funny. I saw that in the show notes and I just laughed out loud. Like, of course. So good.
Oh my God, Kai. Also,
I can name 5 Kais on my left hand. Like, it's crazy.
Is Kai an ethnically neutral name?
All the Kais I know are white.
Great. Okay.
Which, doesn't speak to that either way, honestly.
It doesn't answer the question, but in not answering the question, it answers the question. Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny.
I also love that, like, I mean, Grey's Anatomy, wow. They are always like, we need a character who, like, sings and is non-binary. They're definitely, like, a medical researcher, right? And it's like... Well, yes, of course. Like, there are, like, trans and non-binary people in every profession,
right.
Yes. But it also is, like, this could be a show about, like, this could be, like, the show Nashville or something where it's, like, it could be about models. It could be about any number of things. But the fact that, like, oh, hey, I'm Kai Bartley. I work in, like, this medical research facility.
Oh, my God. Kills me. It's hot. Listen, it's hot. I get it.
It's great. I love it. And like, actually, like, reminded. I'm trying to think. We'll probably see more examples in the future, but like stories where a character who has perceived themselves as straight enters into a relationship with a non-binary person, and their romantic interest has to be like, are you comfortable being in a queer relationship? Like, that came up on Sex Education, and I thought was handled very well because it largely centered the experience of the non-binary person, even though it was more of a main character who was the straight guy that was starting to date them. Grey's Anatomy maybe doesn't have that level of nuance and does mostly focus it on Amelia Shepard being like, well, what does this mean for me? But
do you watch Selling Sunset at all?
I don't.
Well, I was going to say a real life example of people who are doing it great, Chriselle Staus and G Flip, the Australian non-binary rapper.
Yeah.
They're crushing it. They're very sweet.
Well, and it's what's interesting, and maybe it's not that interesting, but like Oh, I'm so glad we're learning more about like straight people investigating their own sexuality. Like this isn't going to be a storyline where like a gay person dates a non-binary person and is like, wait, does that mean I'm gay anymore?
Yeah.
You know, what does this mean for me? Like that storyline doesn't come up, but also like that's understandable. You have already investigated your sexuality, you know, whereas
I would like to see it.
Yeah. I think
You
let's
know?
just have more. Let's have more of this. So
Casting opportunities for Fire Master.
like, also like because this is a fairly superficial selection from me for this Macho Hall of Fame, like Macho of the Week Hall of Fame. They're tall. They sing. They have great hair. They have impeccably tailored suits.
Mm-hmm.
They love us just the way we are. Like, are they the best actor I've ever seen? I don't know. I haven't seen enough of them to really say that. Like, you know, I liked their speech that I saw on Instagram and I would smooch. So
Love it.
That's welcome to the Hall of Fame.
I feel like they are the person that we could actually most likely get some Hall of Fame merch. So we'll see what's in the cards there.
I mean,
welcome, ER.
We send this, it gets to like Arnold Schwarzenegger's publicist's assistant, and then ER like actually comes to pick up the shirt.
Oh my God. Dream.
Oh, man. Well, with all of this silliness and seriousness, that is what this show is. Thank you for joining us for this season of Feminist Frequency Radio, presenting Machos Fully Loaded.
I am AC Lamberty. I'm on Instagram and Letterboxd, both at AC Lamberty. And you can check out that list of films that we've talked about so far.
I'm Kat Spada. I'm on Twitter at @cat_EX_machina. You can follow Feminist Frequency on all the social media at FemFreak. And if you're a Patreon subscriber, stick around for the bonus episode where we're bringing you a little Social Pages party report from the event of the season, which was last weekend's Transchella fundraiser.
We are on our Vanity Fair.
Yes. I can't wait to talk more about this, but only for those in the Patreon.
If you know, you know.
Yeah.
If you like the show, help other people find it by subscribing, rating, and commenting on your favorite podcast app.
Thanks so much for listening.
Bye.